Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, into our draft educational series. My name is Bahamut, joined by Justing. And Justing, what map are we going to be breaking down for everyone at home today?
Hanamura, everyone's favorite, I'm sure.
Everyone has a clear-cut way to play this map. It's not, do I get the Sentinel camp? Do I push the go-kart? Do I just sit in bottom lane as a 5-man stack and hard push the lane, getting my Sentinel off cooldown? Well, we're here to tell you exactly what you need to do to win a Hanamura Temple draft and the map. So, let's immediately start talking about some of the goals of this map, Justing. I had alluded to a few, but what is your preferred playstyle for this map? Is it a 1-4 focusing on the Sentinel camp? Do you look at that objective phase when it pops up, the go-kart as we like to call it, and push that around the map?
So the objective is a little bit weak on this map with the go-kart. The main objective on the map is that Sentinel camp, the samurai, the gigantic Genji with the sword. He's kind of the main focus through kind of most of the early to mid game. And you definitely want to play for a 4-1 split. And one important note before we even look at draft stuff is if you are the team with the 4-man that has the Sentinel camp pushing in it, make sure you go help your solo laner when the enemy takes theirs, because a lot of the time the team on the left just automatically loses the early game because no one helps and their solo laner has to deal with one gigantic samurai in their lane.
That is a very good point. That is a very good point.
Watch out for that.
Yeah. We were talking about that a little bit beforehand. It's, that solo lane, the top lane, if you are on the blue side, the left side, you typically do struggle as the solo laner unless you have some fantastic wave clear. And we'll start talking about some of that solo laning here in just a little bit. The other thing that I think we need to get into, of course, is the bans. This is the very important part of getting into a Hanamura Temple draft, or any draft in general here, Justing. So we're going to start with our left side team, our Team A as our first pick team. And what do we ban out immediately here on a push-heavy map?
So Sylvanas is going to be the ban for first pick. It's not something that you really want to first pick, but you don't really want to give it over to second pick either. It synergizes really well with those Sentinel camps since they are so strong and since they're up so often. You can really combo that with the disabling buildings from Sylv, and she also gets camps really quickly, so just kind of a spooky thing that you can ban away.
And that's the nice thing about first pick is you can kind of not waste a ban, but you can force the enemy team to spend a ban denying something on your side. So this Team B, or our second team on the right, what do they ban out and deny from Team A?
So Johanna's the easy ban in this situation. For Team B on any map, Johanna's still very ridiculous, and she's a flex pick, so banning her before you see what else has been picked, what else has been banned from Team A is just a good idea always, so that your next ban can be a little more flexible.
So we already have a Johanna ban, we already have a Sylvanas ban. I think we need to start focusing on to some of these stronger heroes as well that these teams don't want to play against. And is it a solo lane priority? Is it a core 4 priority coming up from this Team A?
So a Hogger ban makes the most sense, banning out an off lane, because Hogger is one of the few off lanes that can do camps very quickly. And if you're not willing to first pick that with a lot of other good offlane options available, it's something that's definitely worth banning out.
And we talk about camps actually a lot, and that is going to be a little bit of a focus, a lot of actually the focus of this draft video, because camps do give a lot of experience, and there's a lot of rotation and congestion, especially with those vision camps on the north and south portions of the map that teams constantly are trading out back and forth. But of course, we have to finish out our ban phase, and Team B, what are they going to get rid of? They've already gotten rid of the Johanna.
Stukov is still quite strong on this patch, even after the recent nerfs, so banning him out makes a lot of sense. You don't want to give that away to the first pick team, especially with the amount of point control that the puddle can have if you are fighting over those camps, which ends up being quite the focus on this map, is often just invades and fights around those camps, and being able to not have the puddle all the time on the point is very nice.
Low blow, massive shove, and even that level 1, the low blow at level 1, the massive shove, and the flailing swipe, they're all very, very strong talents for Stukov to control a lot of these camps as well, so I absolutely agree. But we have a wide open first pick per se for the Team A. Do they go into the Junkrat? Are they going into Blaze? Are they going into the Rhaegar? What is this first pick? It has to be something critical and strong.
So the Rhaegar definitely makes the most sense for first pick, mainly because of that camp, the ability to do camps, which is something we're mentioning a lot, but Rhaegar is the only support, basically of them all, that can do camps, that can do siege damage. So picking up the Rhaegar kind of opens up your flexibility in the draft later on. It denies a strong pick in Rhaegar, but also he is uniquely strong on the map, being able to take out those camps quite easily. You can get the Vision camp very quickly as just a Rhaegar, which no other support can do that.
Lightning Shields adds a lot to his camp ability, if you will, but also the fact that you have the Cleanse baseline, the Ancestor Healing at 10, and the Farseer's Blessing at level 20 that upgrade with the Splash and secondary charge, or secondary cast of Ancestor Healing is extremely strong with Rhaegar, where I feel like I only see Farseer's Blessing at level 20 nowadays. But let's talk about what Team B can grab here, because they're only seeing a Junkrat on the other side, or excuse me, they're only seeing a Rhaegar on the other side, and Junkrat, as I was just mentioning, is still up, Blaze is still up. Do you look for any sort of anti-healing into the Rhaegar early on, or is that not a consideration right here, Justing?
Definitely best to just look to pick up some more of the overall strong heroes for the map and just in general. So like you mentioned, the Junkrat and the Blaze, super strong for Team B. Getting the Junkrat, who has a lot of point control, and it also not only has point control for the camps, but also is one of those characters that I would call sort of like a goalie, where you can't really siege into them. In a map that is very 4-1 focused, where you have just a 4v4 happening quite a bit, if there's ever an opportunity to push, having someone like a Junkrat who can just clear the wave and make it nearly impossible to siege into them with just one member is super valuable. So taking the Junkrat for the zone control, the point control, and the fact that he can stop sieges by himself, and then the Blaze, just overall super strong offlaner, but also has that point control as well. Really strong picks for Team B.
And Team B, they're doing that fun thing that we've talked about in the past with some of these drafts. Blaze can operate as a main tank or as an offlaner. So it is kind of one of those things where the members of Team A have to consider, okay, what is this Blaze going to be? And we have to kind of guess against that. But, of course, there's still 2 more picks for Team A, and what are they going to go into before we get into our second ban phase?
So something that no other tank can do besides this one is do camps, and that's Murden with his level 4 talent. He can do camps quite well with the Stormbolt upgrade. So also I just think Murden is very underrated in general, and being able to play out of vision on this map where teams are typically playing in those lanes and you have the bushes right there next to the vision camp, if you control that, the threat of him jumping out at any moment is really scary. So picking up the Murden to help do camps, just overall strong tank that's not going to get countered, very good. And then since we are in a 4-man map, you can look to pick something like a Zul'jin, which you normally wouldn't be able to pick on most maps. But since you're in a 4v4 for most of the time, and the enemy team is kind of forced to fight you like that, you're going to be able to get quite a lot of stacks. So this is an opportunity to take something like the Zul'jin that you normally wouldn't otherwise be able to pick.
I do love Murden for that level 4 Sledgehammer, as you were mentioning, and then at level 10 you get the Piercing Bolt and the cooldown reduction from autos, so you're throwing out that Sledgehammer, you're sieging, you're getting camps, you're anchoring really, really well, and then of course, we've all talked about it, we've all heard Lobber talk about it, Bronzebeard Rage at 13 is just such a critical talent for Murden. But, you know, you brought up Zul'jin here, Justing, and I gotta ask you, are you a Reckless man, or are you a Headhunter at level 1?
I'm Q build only.
Oh!
Except for an ARAMs.
Fair. That's very fair. Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to get you to ARAM on Zul'jin one day. But let's talk about ban phase here, because we've got a Rhaegar Murden Zul'jin for Team A. We've got a Junkrat Blaze for the side of Team B. So we're lacking a solo laner on Team A, and we're lacking quite a few things for Team B. So what are we going to see in this ban phase here, Justing?
So the Yrel ban from Team B makes a lot of sense, mostly because the Hoggers already been banned out by Team A, and they didn't opt to take an offlaner in their 2-3 pick, with the Murden and the Zul'jin being picked up. So with them already having a Blaze, the Hogger being banned away, banning away Yrel, just another strong offlaner is a good choice. And for Team A, banning away the Diablo, which is something that we've seen quite a bit in the second rotation of bans, just because he's so tanky, he's so hard to deal with. Even having that Zul'jin, it's still a little bit scary to deal with him. It kind of changes the way that you might need to draft your next 2 picks still, even with the Zul'jin. So banning away the Diablo, just removing a little bit more point control from Team B, really good bans for both teams.
And I do like the Diablo ban because he's, as we had mentioned, really great in a lot of these grouped up team fights where you get around the Sentinel camp, you get around the Vision camp. Apocalypse is great, Lightning Breath is great. It all synergizes with Junkrat and Blaze quite well, Steel Traps, Jet Propulsions. So I do like this ban coming out from Team A. But of course, we get into the second phase of our draft, the latter half of this draft, where some critical choices need to be made, especially with that flex spot. And we'll get to that for Team B towards the end. But we're through the ban phase, and Team B, they needed a couple things here. What's the big priority after this ban?
So you talked about the flex spot. You need to be flexible for Team B. So you're going to want to take your tank and your support here. Anduin, still available. Just overall, a really, really strong support. He does play well around those points where everyone's grouped up. You've got the W to heal everybody. You've got the pull in case anything gets scary, and light bomb. I mean, both ults are good on the point. And then you could pick up something like a Garrosh for your main tank, which again is just a focus on point control. Being able to throw the enemy tank off of a point when people are trying to capture things like the Sentinel camp, super strong. So the main focus, just getting those roles to support the tank and focusing on camps, focusing on point control, just basically stacking as much of that as possible. Really strong on Hanamura.
At Muradins, they love to go into Dwarf Block at level 1. I've been taking that almost every single game at this point. And so usually it's like Dwarf Block, Heavy Impact, Dwarf Launch as well. So you get that increased range and cooldown reduction and the slows and the armor. And you jump in, and I like the idea of, Muradin jumps in, he's like, I'm going to make the big plays, and Garrosh pops Indomitable, throws Muradin away, and that's just an easy camp steal from the side of Team B. So really, really good pickup there. Also, Anduin has that pull, that leap of faith, for any sort of hairy situations. If Zul'jin pops Tostingo and he's just shredding through the Junkrat or even the Blaze, it's going to be a great utilization or a tool to kind of get someone out of that bad situation. But we have still more draft to talk about here, Justin, because the last 2 picks for Team A are up and available. And what do you grab here for Hanamura Temple?
So this is where things get a little bit interesting. So since you didn't pick up your offlaner, you now have the Urel's been banned away, the Hogger's been banned. The offlane pool is a little bit more choked. This is the one map where you shouldn't get flamed for potentially taking in Artanis, which is a little bit weird, but being able to do camps really easily by yourself is super strong. If you're able to actually just solo the Sentinel camp, which almost no hero can, not safely, Artanis can do that. So picking up an Artanis, something that Team 1 can do. And then that's your camp. But having someone similar to the Junkrat on the enemy team to match that is sort of a goalie, you could pick something up like a Deathwing, which, again, a little bit weird, but really good into things like Junkrat, where he can't really interact with the Deathwing. You can't, knock him away. You can't trap him. Garrosh can't really interact with the Deathwing. And then if the enemy team tries to siege into you ever, having just one Deathwing to breathe on the wave is pretty much enough. So it's just a good way to round out the comp where you have sort of another goalie of sorts, someone who clears waves that can kind of defend forever, and then you have your ability to solo camps, which Artanis does somewhat uniquely.
And Artanis also has a little bit of that point control, as we've been talking about as well, with the Phase Prism. You can get that swap, maybe get someone off a point, and the Phase Prism does have I believe it's 2 seconds of unstoppable. Actually, I think it's 1.5. Someone in YouTube comments knows the answer. I just checked it recently and now I'm doubting myself. But regardless, you have the swap potential. You have Bellowing Roar from Deathwing as another control point, and as you had mentioned, you can't chastise, you can't steal trap, you can't concussion mine, you can't toss away the Deathwing. So there's a lot of really, really good utility with this. And I know some of you might be saying, Artanis Deathwing, that's a little crazy, but you have your hyper carry Zul'jin, and I really like this composition of Team A. But we're not done. We have one more pick, and we have to discuss this last pick. What is Team B going to do with their flex spot to wrap up this draft for Hanamura Temple?
So with Team B, their one weakness is that they don't have an easy way to do camps. So they need an easy way to do camps, and they also need a bit of percent damage and tank killing because they only have a Junkrat right now for range damage. Doesn't do the best damage against tanks, and there's now a really beefy Muradin, beefy Deathwing, just really tanky members. This is where something like a Malthael could come out, and you could run a triple melee comp, which is not super common, but Malthael kind of fills all the gaps in the draft so far. You have the ability to do camps, you have the ability to do damage to things like the Artanis, the Deathwing, the Muradin. It punishes having so many melees on Team A, and it's kind of just why you need to, it's an example of why you need to keep your flex pick for that last pick if you are the second pick team. Being able to pick something like this that is really strong into pretty much the entire enemy team can't be overstated in how valuable it is.
Who comes out on top of this draft, Justing? Is Team B the stronger draft? Is Team A the stronger draft? Or, as always, does it really just boil down to the execution of these teams?
I think a lot of it comes down to just gameplay. The main thing that I would be concerned with is how many stacks the Zul'jin managed to get through the early game. If the Zul'jin is super stacked, I think Team A has a little bit easier of a time. But once it gets to late game, Deathwing might struggle a bit. Just into all the damage that would be coming out late game, into the Garrosh potentially going into the damage reduction with Decimate, which then he can start interacting with those heroes, with all the melees on Team A. That could be quite strong. So it's definitely still going to come down to execution. But a lot of it comes down to how many stacks the Zul'jin is able to get.
And you were talking about stacks, and I know there's someone watching this video who wants to know the answer to this. And of course, Justing, you had talked about camp clear, you talked about camp priority, you talked about clearing Sentinel camp in that solo lane. At level 1, Artanis, what do you take? Is it an amateur opponent, or are you taking Protector Vire to get the dings?
It should probably be amateur opponent for the map so that you can solo the camps for your team safely. It depends. I mean, it does depend what you're up against. In this draft, you definitely would want to go with that. You're not going to have too much fun trying to get stacks into a Garrosh team. You'll probably get thrown in and die. So, yeah, amateur opponent if you want to be a responsible citizen.
Thank you all for joining us for another breakdown draft of another Heroes of Storm map, this time looking at Hanamura Temple. Be sure to check out other maps and drafts that Justing and I have done in the past right over here.